before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of the interview, that service uniform photo has become an internet meme because of how kind of unassuming that you look in that photo, and just I think the disparity or contrast between what most people would expect a guy with your career would look like versus how you come across in that photo. I'm curious, what was your first reaction when you first kind of saw it circulate?
Yeah, it started circulating on memes. I think what happened is I went on the website Army Together We Serve. If you're familiar with that, there's the Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, Army Together We Serve, and I went on that and I posted that picture. That was my retirement picture I took, like in November of 1998, and I put that on the website, and I think some people saw it and were surprised or whatever, and so yeah, it started circulating around on the internet and with memes and everything, and they were just wondering who this person was because they never heard of it because for 20 years, I was in the black side of special operations, so I was kind of out of sight for about 20 years, and then I just pop up, and so I think it was just a lot of speculation
Yeah.
and
Did it did it
curiosity.
did it surprise you that it's been as popular and prolific as it has been?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know what people expect what a soldier's supposed to look like. They especially in special operations. I think they draw a lot of conclusions from all the movies that they see, these action movies, and you know, you just we're just average, everyday Americans.
Yeah. Well, I would say in terms of the way, maybe the aesthetics, that's the case, but the mental component is, as I imagine you well know, there's a pretty big distinction, and I'm looking forward to getting into your career generally speaking, and especially being a founding member of one of the most famous units in existence. Just before we get into that, I'm curious, what's the last full book that you've read?
The last book I read,
Yeah.
the Kaboom Boys, Elaine Peake wrote a book about her father who served in Army bomb disposal. He was a captain in World War II. And so she wrote this book, and so I'm reading it now, called Kaboom Boys. They're trying to make it into a mini series on TV. So the book is not a biography of her father. It's like, what would you call it? It's in novel format, but everything happened in the book is true. Some of her father's name is true, but the men that served with her father have pseudonames. But the other people, high-ranking people, are real names, and so that's what my last book I'm reading
Yeah.
now.
Was there a specific or significant takeaway from it for you?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things we're trying to do with that book, Tim Gray from the World War II Foundation, who has, I don't know, 40, 50 World War II documentaries under his belt, he now wants to do one on our military bomb disposal during World War II. So hopefully we can get some funding to do the documentary, and I was asked to be one of the technical advisors on the documentary.
Oh wow, that'll be awesome. I hope that comes to fruition. It sounds awesome. If time travel were possible, where and when would you go and why?
Time travel. No, I never thought of that. Gee, where would I go? What period of time stands out? Well, World War II is fascinating, And that was the beginning of U.S. bomb disposal in World War II. Both the Navy and the Army set up schools prior to us entering the war, and we sent people over to England to learn the art of bomb disposal. So that was the formation of today's explosive ordnance disposal. So that was a unique period of time. When I graduated from EOD school in 1969, the explosive ordnance disposal field was only at that time 27 years old, so it was relatively young. And so got to see and meet and some of the World War II veterans that served in bomb disposal.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I love it. Do you have a favorite quote?
Favorite quote? Uh, well, my kids will tell you that it's. I would say, well, what did you learn? When they would get into a little mischief and everything. But recently I heard the quote, that we have the human, we have two deaths. We have a mortal death, and then we have the final death is when the last person speaks your name. And that was said, Admiral Olson gave that quote at Major General Bargewell's dedication up in Hokum, Washington. His schoolmates dedicated a park in Hokum, Washington for Major General Eldon Bargewell, and Admiral Olson spoke at the thing. And that was one of the quotes that he used.
Yeah, I love that. It for sure highlights the importance of legacy and frankly, the impact you have. That's profound. EDC wise, I mean, having spent so many times in such a kind of famous unit and one known for its shooting prowess, do you carry day to day when you're at home?
I do not. I don't carry. When we go out, in an area where there are bears, I carry bear spray. But nope, I do not hand carry a weapon. I don't have a concealed weapon, nothing. I do have a shotgun I keep.
Yeah. I think that would surprise a lot of people. Is that a very intentional decision, or is it just kind of you're just not that into it, or?
I'm not that into it.
Yeah.
I don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious, what was your favorite thing to do growing up?
Favorite thing to do, to explore. We lived out in the country, and we had a swamp that was nearby, and I'd spend time out into in the swamp, just exploring, seeing, looking at nature, wildlife, yeah, that kind of
And
stuff.
where was that at? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Michigan in the Lower Peninsula, in the central western part, just north of Grand Rapids, about 35 miles north of Grand Rapids, a place called Howard City, Michigan.
Oh, okay. And did you have siblings? And what was your childhood like, if you were to kind of characterize it?
Well, I had two younger brothers. Frank was 2 years younger, Randy 3 years younger. I was the oldest. Grew up, attended Howard City schools, and most of my classmates from kindergarten to our senior year was the same kids. I lived in the country. I was a member of the Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, 4-H, that kind of stuff. I raised a grand champion steer that was in the fair one year, and so I lived out in the country.
Yeah.
Did a lot of work for farmers. Bringing in hay, bringing in straw.
I mean, easy to characterize it as a pretty rural, hardworking childhood, would you say?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
With a lot
And
of
what?
freedom. My parents gave me a lot of freedom.
Yeah. Any getting into trouble, or were you pretty straight laced?
No, I never got into any serious trouble. You know, one of the things, that I say, I was interested in science as a kid. I would get like chemistry sets for Christmas. Each year I'd get a bigger chemistry set. And I would make, well, in I've said this before, in popular science, they have ads in the back. And there was this one ad for 101 pyrotechnic and explosive formulas that you could get if you send in $1. So I sent in my dollar and I got all these formulas to make explosives and pyrotechnics, which I did. So my parents, so they allowed me to make it, and then of course I had a place out in the yard where I would set the stuff off. So yeah, I was making explosives as a child.
Yeah. So hardwired into your DNA, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Man, that's awesome. Did you play any sports growing up? Was that a big part of your life?
Uh, in my seventh grade, I played football. Played really good football. Then my eighth grade, I had a new coach, and I just sat on the bench, so didn't do that. I wrestled a little bit in wrestling in high school and track. Uh, Made me a pole vaulter.
Yeah.
I wasn't
That's
very good at it.
that's awesome. From a kind of I guess an overall childhood standpoint, was the inclination and catalyst for joining the military uh, kind of did it stem at all from any of the things that your parents did with you, camping, hunting, shooting,
Yeah,
that kind of stuff?
yeah. My dad served in the Navy during World War II. He was a gunner's mate on an LST. I had relatives that served in the military. I had a uncle that was in the army and served on Guadalcanal. Another uncle that served in a medic in Korea, and like my grandfather, my mother's dad, he was a Marine prior to World War One. He served in the Pacific on the armored cruiser USS Maryland in the Pacific prior to World War One.
Hmm. Was that a big part of growing up, hearing them talk about that kind of stuff, and did that influence your decision to want to join?
I think it did. Yeah, and of course, in the 1960s was the 100th anniversary of the American Civil War. So there was a lot of stuff about the American Civil War going on. Um, I Again for Christmas one time I got a Civil War set, uh, with toy soldiers and everything, and then another year I got an Alamo set.
Hmm.
So I was always interested in the military, and I knew that I wanted to go into the military when I was old enough. So that was always a thing. I didn't know what I wanted to do in high school, what I wanted to do for my life. I planned on going to college, but I didn't know what I wanted to major in. So I figured I'd go into the Army, and maybe that'd give me time to figure out what I wanted to do.
And what year was that you joined?
68,
68.
basically 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, and it was Tri County High School there. Uh, I was still 17. Both my parents signed for me to go in. So I entered basic training on 1 July 1968.
Wow. Uh, so going through, I guess during high school and just as you were growing up, and the Vietnam War is taking place at that time. I'm curious what your thoughts were thinking back to to then, whether it was political or so, from a global or foreign policy standpoint, like were those things entering your mind at all? Was that anything that you even really thought about as to whether or not we should be there or not, or just with all the kind of chaos that it seems like there was at the time societally? Was that something that you considered or thought about as you were entering?
Yeah, I was really, the Vietnam War was on the news every night. And of course, early in 68 was the big 1968 Tet Offense, where the North Vietnamese made a big push, hoping that the South Vietnamese would rally to support the North Vietnamese. And, so all that was going on. Of course, the White House and the Pentagon were, saying that we're winning the war. And then the news people saying that we're not winning the war, we're losing the war. Uh, you know, that was a desperation. The 1968 it decimated the Viet Cong in the South. The Viet Cong, after the 1968 Tet Offense, the Viet Cong organization ceased to really exist. It did exist after 68, but it was made up with members of the North Vietnamese, not members of the South Vietnamese. So, yeah, it didn't work the way, but, North Vietnam did an excellent job of psyops, of, making the American people, here we are, distrust in what we're being told by the White House and the Pentagon. And I wanted to go over to see for myself what is it all, why are we there? Why did we put combat troops in 19 well, we had visors going in 58, but why did we put combat troops in 1965? So I wanted to see for myself what was going on.
I mean, it's fascinating that curiosity played the largest role in you wanting to actually go over there and see. If you could kind of walk us through from the time you joined until you ended up stepping foot over there, and what that process looked like.
Well, so I talked to my recruiter about different options, careers, MOSs in the military. One of them was explosive ordnance disposal, but you could not enlist for it. You had to have an MOS, and then after you had an MOS, you could volunteer for EOD. The reason being that EOD had such a high washout rate that if you washed out of the school, you'd have an MOS to be immediately reassigned. You wouldn't have to be sent to an AIT. So, in basic training, I attended a briefing by the EOD team there, the detachment at Fort Knox, Kentucky. I signed an intent that I would like to volunteer for EOD. And then I went to my MOS, which was ammunition renovation. Ammunition, it's basically maintenance of ammunition. Now, today, that MOS doesn't exist because all maintenance of ammunition is done at the depot level. But back then, both civilians and military worked at the depot to renovate ammunition. But it was a good stepping stone for EOD because one of the things ammunition renovation people did, was to destroy ammunition that was uneconomical to repair. So we went out to the EOD range there at Redstone Arsenal, and they taught us how to destroy ammunition, large amounts of ammunition that was uneconomical to repair. And that's where I actually, signed a volunteer statement, went through, I put on the chemical suit. You had to wear the chemical suit for a half an hour, make sure you're not claustrophobic. And from there, I went right to EOD school. The phase one of EOD school was chemical and biological, and that was held at Fort McClellan, Alabama. So I went through that 2-week course. And then I went to the surface course of EOD, which was at Indian Head, Maryland, the Naval Ordnance Station. So I went through that part of the school. And then I was in E4, and I wasn't eligible. Well, I was a PFC when I graduated from EOD school, so I wasn't eligible to go to the nuclear weapons part of the school. So I was assigned to technical escort at Edgewood Arsenal. At technical escort, we work with chemical munitions, escort chemical munitions, and so I did that. Then while I was there, I made E4, finished nuclear weapons disposal, and after that, I volunteered for Vietnam. I actually put in three requests for Vietnam. And each time I would put in a request for Vietnam, my commanding officer, Colonel Dickey, would disapprove it. He didn't want me to leave Tech Escort. But when I put in it for the third time, he says, "Okay, go ahead." They even offered me Rocky Mountain Arsenal. We had a detachment there, Tech Escort detachment at Rocky Mountain Arsenal, which I like Rocky. I went there TDY twice. But I wanted to go to Vietnam. That was my sole purpose going into the military, was to go to Vietnam.
Wow. Man, that's fascinating.